verdict?
It was a very thoughtful and very meticulous analysis of the evidence. And of course my client is very pleased with the outcome. It was based very heavily on his own assessment of the situation. The judge said that his assessment was the correct one. And so it's important to recognize that a professional trained eye approaches a very difficult situation differently than a younger person, perhaps intoxicated, without that experience, might approach the same situation.
The judge made a big note in terms of the crowd, the size of the crowd, and that technically it doesn't really matter how large the crowd was. A crowd is a crowd. Yes,
I think what's really important here is that, as the judge mentioned, there were only 2 officers, and there was another person in the police car that distracted the attention of one of the officers. So effectively you only had 1 officer. So in that situation, and backup is 10 minutes away, in that situation it doesn't take a very large crowd to be potentially dangerous when there's effectively just 1 officer. And had there been 30 or 40 officers, then you look at the crowd differently.
When you were speaking to Constable Scott afterward, I think you mentioned something about it. The judge suggested it wasn't even close, the decision. How did you?
Yeah, it was interesting. You'd have to look at the ruling, but he said things like it's not even remotely possible that the Crown witness's version could be accepted. So there were some. I always look for adjectives and adverbs, and the adjectives and adverbs that the judge used in that judgment demonstrated that he had pretty strong views about the appropriateness of Constable Scott's actions.
How big is this in terms of being found not guilty of excessive force? I think for a police officer, it really comes to the crux of his job.
It is. Any allegation of excessive force goes to the heart of their professionalism because they are trained to use force responsibly. So an allegation that your use of force was so irresponsible that it was a crime would be very much like saying, a journalist is guilty of libel. Those are the kinds of things that go to the heart of one's professional integrity, or a doctor is guilty of causing disease. These are the kinds of things that professionals who take their work seriously very much take to heart, which is why this long process, it's been a year and a half, it's been extremely difficult for Constable Scott. It always is for officers in that situation, because they're very much concerned about their professional integrity.